Yeah, hello. So I'm Emma, and I'm here to introduce you to the Marketing Masterclass for practitioners. So the reason I did this is because working in the holistic therapy space, or even in the practitioner space, if you're a social worker, psychologist, counselor, it's actually quite a different way of marketing than your typical marketing strategies that you see for small business or even bigger companies. So it's really important to try and figure out what's actually going to work for us. Otherwise, we keep putting all of our energy into things that just don't work, and that plays havoc with our emotions. It plays havoc with how confident we feel in our business and how successful we are as well. So I thought I'd put together this masterclass to just talk practitioner to practitioner and say, look, this is what I've seen in the past 15 years. I've set up a couple of really successful businesses, and I've been practicing now for over 15 years, and I've seen so many people come and go in the industry, and I know what works and what doesn't after all this time. So I don't have all of the answers, I'm sure, but I really know one, the emotional game that has to do with marketing. So that'll be my big focus today as well, is to talk about what the emotions are behind our marketing, but also what is actually going to be effective for us. So I think the number one thing that makes our industry so different is that we're really connection based and we're really community based. And we forget that. And we forget that, when we think of marketing, we think automatically social media, I think. And I was speaking to a marketing expert the other day, actually, and she's very much talked about, um, how we market in a small rural regional community versus in the big smoke. But what makes us different is that we have to have those connections with people. It's not just a sense of putting yourself out there and doing lots of reels and trying to work in SEO and blogs and all that kind of stuff. We have to really focus on how do we make that local connection. And ultimately, when you think about it, we're asking people to come into our room, to be vulnerable, to open up the rawest parts of themselves that they've kept hidden. And sorry, I'm just putting some people on mute. Thank you. Um, and it can be really confronting, right, for our clients. So we have to form an element of trust and connection there to say, I'm a safe person to come to. And if you're just doing that through, posts on social media, it's probably not always going to work really well for you, because it's not really heart-based connection. It's not connection to connection. So most of our marketing actually has to do with a lot of word of mouth and building that word of mouth and having people understand what we do and how we do it, which is actually quite emotionally confronting, because we then have to put who we are and what we know out into the world. And if you're human, then you probably aren't always super confident in that space, especially when you're coming out of college. So it's a real mindset game as far as, okay, having to be really comfortable with who you are in clinic and what you're there to provide, and whether you can actually do that for people. And also, being able to form connections and really hold that space of, I am here for you. So I guess one big emotional leap that really works for our industry is that when we can market from a place of, I'm here to help you. Like, I can see that you're in pain and I want to help. One, it actually feels genuine and authentic to us, because that's what we got into this industry for, right? Was to help people. And two, it just opens up that heart and it allows people to connect with us as people. And it opens up that pathway to create trust and safety, so that they then feel more comfortable coming to us. So really, when you step out of college and we've kind of got these business modules, and one of the, big thing about the business module is like coming up with your business name and all that kind of stuff. So what I will say about business names is that really useful for if you have a multimodality clinic, or if you have other things underneath that you want to sell that's not necessarily you based. But if you're working one to one with people, people are going to refer you by name. And so they're going to search for you by name as well and not your business name. Business name kind of, it's moot at that point, you know. So it's, so work within your, if you know, if you're really struggling to find a business name, come up with your name. Like, that's what people are going to be sharing anyway. No matter what your business name is, they're going to be sharing your name. And so make sure, even if you do have a business name, that on your Instagram and everything else, you have your name there everywhere, and where you're from and your location, right? I think, you know, I've gone through quite a few websites in my mentoring, and so many people just don't put their location down. You don't know where they are. Even when they're online, people want to, again, form that connection with you based on who you are, where you're at, where you're practicing from, and whether, you know, they can access you that way. So make sure you use your name, right? So that's my number one big marketing tip. Use your name, forget the business names, doesn't really matter. If you want to sell your business later on down the track, look, it kind of gets tricky with databases because you do need client permission and all that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily something you need to worry about unless you're, again, set up. If you want to sell your business as a practitioner, probably the best way to do it is to bring on a locum and allow people to sign up to that locum. But that's a whole other issue. Today is more about marketing. So again, you know, I think forming connections with people, forming networks is really, really important in our industry. That's the number one way you're going to market, is by having coffee with other practitioners and other business owners and getting to know each other, getting to know who's in your community, what issues are around in your community, what are people struggling with, what holes are there in the healthcare system in your very local town. Because most people are going to come from 5, 10 Ks, right? To like 20 Ks max. Doubtful, right? So it's, you know, unless you're rural, and then the Ks change. But, you know, particularly in the metropolitan area, your radius is really small. And so you want to get to know as many business owners in that area as possible. So you can go to all your networking days, and there's lots of different, you know, chamber of business and all that kind of stuff. But you can also just go in and chat to people and ask them to hold talks at their place. So a number one way that I built my business when I moved from Sydney to Northern Beaches, I was very established there, and I moved 3 hours north to a town which had never really had a kinesiologist before. They had chirokinesiology, but never had a kinesiologist before. It's a low socioeconomic area, and the openness to alternative therapies was kind of still on the edge a little bit. So, you know, I had to really build trust and connection with the community of I'm actually someone worth seeing. And I can see that there's holes in the system that you've got. So I spent some time and I talked to a lot of people about the struggles that they would go through, or that their kids would go through, or that people they know would go through. You know, just having general conversations with local people. And, you know, what they were showing me was that, you know, you've got your doctors and you've got your specialists, and the wait times are huge because you've got most practitioners who are coming from a Sydney area to travel up here. But there was kind of no other education. It was all treatment, allied health based. So I started doing talks, and the talks I did on very general things that I had focused on, and I'll talk about this as well. But I'd focused on anxiety, learning difficulties, ADHD, things I knew that people had to wait a long time for here, and that was very prevalent, but they didn't really know what to do to help each other. So the most popular talk that I did was actually how to help your loved one through anxiety. So it wasn't for them specifically, it was how to help a loved one, whether it was kids or an adult. And again, it was just a half an hour free chat. But what it enabled me to do was connect with people. They could see me, they could start to relate to me. They got in my energy field and they felt like they could ask me questions, and they got a certain vibe from who I was. Was I this, crazy alternative person, or did I have some, real things to talk about? And what kind of things did I talk about? And did they resonate with that? And so, with that as well, I started to get a database of people up here that I could start forming connections with. So that's my second rule of thumb, is to always have some way for them to access, like to build your database, because you want to form trust and connection, remember, in your marketing as a practitioner. So having newsletters is a really good way to do that, or events locally, or talks and webinars online, all that kind of stuff, where they can start to access you. Even things like today, right? It's like, I just I want you to get to know me. I want you to get to know my feel, that kind of thing. And I just kept repeating that and kept putting it out there. So it wasn't so much about me going, putting posts out on social media. It actually makes it easier to promote an event or something like that, because you're giving them something solid to come to and a reason to engage with you, rather than just putting stuff out there and having to come up with content all the time but feeling like no one's really engaging with it. That's what's hard about social media, and that's what I think becomes a bit of a mindset game, because you're always putting stuff out there, but you're not really getting that feedback back. So it's really exposing. And when you're starting to do it, from the get-go, from coming out of college or only a couple of years into clinic, it can feel really vulnerable, to talk and connect with people and to share your knowledge. And so, to have that space, which is small, controlled, there's a purpose to it. It gives that a sense of comfort and structure. So there you go. So that's kind of, when we're talking about marketing, it's not so much about the perfect way to do things. It's more about how do you open yourself up to connection, and how do you open yourself up to hearing and making people feel safe in your space, right? So that's number one. Now the next part we kind of have to talk about then is, how do we describe what we do? But I do have a question here. And did I come across any resistance while I was doing this? So while I was doing the talks and things like that? No, because if people aren't interested in what you're doing, they're just going to ignore you most of the time. They're gonna think of something else. They're not really going to fight. Inner resistance, yes, always. Inner resistance is, there's always something, because again, you're putting yourself in that fight or flight position. So public speaking is a major fight or flight trigger, because you're outside of the tribe and everyone's staring at you. So if our survival system is meant to keep us protected and keep us safe, our safest place to be is in the middle of a group, not bringing any attention to ourselves. And that's the least likely way of being eaten or attacked, right? So the moment that you're outside of that and you're talking to people, you really expose yourself. So your nervous system is going to go crazy. And that's where you have to be really aware of your own triggers and your own anxiety. Take those deep breaths and come back to what you know. Come back to, you're just sharing information. And we have a really unique industry, and I say this all the time, because we don't have an apprenticeship of any kind. It's not like you've worked in that industry and then you're taking those skills and building your own business with them. You're not being employed or guided along the way a lot of the time. So it's a really confronting place to be. It's kind of coming out of college and going, I have to, one, get my head around how I practice and get comfortable with that. But two, I have to do it while meeting people who I don't really know and exposing myself to them. So when we're talking about marketing, we're talking about being seen and feeling connected with people. that is a major hurdle that we have to get over. And one of the ways that we can get over that is by talking about what we know and talking about what makes us curious. And if you can come from that space, it makes it a lot easier because it's something that we're genuinely excited with. We're not trying to prove who we are to people. It's just talking about something that we know a lot about. And there's always something that you know a lot about, So no matter how you feel coming out of college or uni, it's this sense of everything can feel really overwhelming at that point, and you can go, okay, I actually know nothing. And that's a good place to be in because you do need to be humble and to take the ego out of it. We all know there's practitioners that have way too much ego and gung ho, and that's the way you should do things. And they're not really listening. Most people aren't like that. Most people come from that really authentic place of I, I am aware of my limitations. But what we do have is years of learning behind, years of feeling interested in having to write assignments and having to communicate different aspects of health to educators within our classmates, all of that kind of thing. And so there's bound to be a couple of areas which really grabbed you during your study that lights you up a bit. And if you can find something that lights you up that you feel genuinely excited to work with, then that's a really, really good place to start with trying to find your niche, right? So it's more about what do I like working? How do I want to work? And it's not always what you had in your head, but it's something that grabs your attention and makes you think. So when I first came out of college, I did not think I'd ever work with kids. And now it's my major specialty. I run courses on how to work with kids and all that kind of stuff. But I just did not, what I was interested in was how the brain worked and how the nervous system worked and how we developed. And that then led to working with kids. And that then led to being really curious about what was actually going on behind the scenes of somebody. And so I think that's what energetically, as well as the way that I would speak to people, drew me to work with kids. And I think your niche tends to find you. I tend to say that your niche finds you rather than you deciding that that's what you're going to work with. What I'll also say about niches is that if you come from a trauma background and your niche is trying to be trauma, that can be really tricky for your nervous system because, yes, it's a beautiful space to hold, but you've constantly got to keep that under wraps. And if you're going to be there completely for somebody, pick an area of the trauma which isn't going to be triggering for you all of the time, right? Or exhausting for you, or having to, because holding space can be really tiring. And it's not so much holding that space for one person, but it's that building up of, if I see 6 different people in a day, 7 different people, then that's 7 different spaces to hold, and I have to keep rising myself up to that energy. Which is why don't compare yourself to people who've been working for years and years and years, right? And their clinics, because it does build, and energetically you tend to be able to hold around 3 a week and then 3 a day. I think, one, that comes because you're seeing new people all of the time, and so that is draining. Whereas I might see 20 people in a week, but I've seen majority of those for months or years, and I might see 3 or 4 new clients a week, right? So most of those repeats, so the actual energy output there all the time is not so big. It's not such a mental load on me all the time. So don't compare yourself to people who are years down the track, right? Just focus on building small and building it consistently and building it regularly and having those connections. And if you're rebooking people, Another one big thing with marketing is that if you're rebooking people, then you're allowing that connection to exist. If you don't rebook, then you're cutting off that connection before you're giving them the chance to trust you. And you're bringing up all of this stuff to the surface within an hour or so. And then you're saying, see you later. Go have fun with that. And they've just opened up their most vulnerable self to you. Probably not even all of the things that they wanted to talk about, because they just wanted to focus on that one thing. And then you kind of send them out in the world again, and they're going to feel a bit discombobulated if you just do that. Whereas when you say, I am here, we're going to go through this together, no matter what, we're going to, take this step by step, and you're going to go forward and you're going to go backward, and you're going to have different aspects of this that pop up. But we're on this journey together now. I'm here. You can use my service as much as you want. So at the end of a session, you always say, well, I'll see you in a week or two. And then if you really, not sure if they want to rebook, you can say, all right, do you want to book in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or do you want to rebook online? Something like that. If that's kind of it. But if you're, it depends on how vulnerable they are. So if they were super vulnerable with me, then I'll always rebook a week later, because I want to make sure that they've gone away, been able to process that, and then come back into a safe place and go, okay, that was kind of good, or that was kind of shit, but I'm here for them. But if it's like, okay, they've done a lot of work before and it's just some minor stuff, I'll see you in 4 weeks and we'll see how you're going. But you never, ever, ever close off that connection. They will let you know if they don't want to book again. But if you're opening up, most of the people here I'm talking to, people are going to be really vulnerable. And if you're someone who's just doing body work and not really connecting with the person, then you're probably not listening to this anyway. But maybe have a look at that and maybe see, okay, how else can I connect with people? Because that's a lot of new connections that you need in, and you're probably burning through a lot of things. But I'm not going to go down that avenue. What I really wanted to say was, if you rebook, then you take a lot of the marketing work out of it for you, and you build your community, and then people are more likely to talk about you. One sign that I'd kind of really hit it here is in rebuilding myself was that people would come in, or friends would talk to me and they'd say, I was at a soccer game the other day, and someone was talking about their child, and someone said, oh, you should go see Emma. And then like 3 or 4 different mums were like, oh yeah, Emma, she's great, you should go see Emma. Yeah, yeah, I see Emma too. And so like, without me even marketing and putting myself all over the soccer team or whatever, I've got all these people now in a group talking about how much I help their families, and then being backed up. And so all of a sudden I've got this respect in the community, and people are much more likely to just go, okay, I'll book online and I will, that's easy. I know that people, the 3 closest people that I have in my life, the 3 people that I trust in my life, trust her, so that be, so again, if you let people rebook and form connections with you, then that's the best way to market. And that's again coming back to that connection and safety, right? That's what we're really marketing as practitioners. We're marketing not so much our expertise and our knowledge and our modality. We get really caught up in, I see so many people advertising their modality and what that modality can do for you and all that kind of stuff. That's, people really aren't interested in that. They just want to know, are you open to help? And in a day and age where you go to a GP and you're in and out in 15 minutes because that's the limitations that they have, then you've got this really deep need in the community to talk about what's going on for them and figure stuff out. And they want to be educated and they want support. They just want to be heard. People just want to be heard these days rather than diagnosed and told, do this, do that. There's so many like, do this, do that, do this, do that. Whereas it's kind of like this scream internally, but no one's hearing me, no one's hearing me, no one's hearing me. And so they don't care really what your modality is as long as you're hearing them and you're willing to go on this journey with them because they need support and they need help to go on this journey of exploration together. Like, you're not meant to have all the answers. You're not meant to say, I'm going to fix you in a session. Crazy. Why? Um, but, it's like, I am here and you know what? I think it could be this. Let's try that for a little bit. I think it could be this. You can do some more research or, no one expects you to know everything. You're just meant to, they really just want you to be there to support and to listen and to kind of give a general guidance, and with a couple of years of study down your belt, you should really have a good understanding of how the body works generally. Whereas we forget that most of the general population actually doesn't have that. They kind of hear a few things, but it's very confusing, all the information out there. And so you're kind of there going, well, I think because of these symptoms, I think let's go down this path first. And then we'll uncover the next layer of feeling and then uncover the next layer of feeling. So it's a sense of sorry, I just had a question pop up, so I was thinking about that. But it's a real I've completely lost that train of thought. It's just they want you to be there to help. So don't worry too much about them reading the techniques and all that kind of stuff that you use because they really don't care. They just want to get to know you as a person. So this question is, any tips on how, if a client says that yes, they will rebook, but they never do, even with a reminder and check-in? Look, it's probably just not a fit. And it's probably a chance to ask yourself, okay, where did I feel like that connection wasn't formed? Now, I'm a kinesiologist, so I'll come at it from a kinesiologist point of view. And I think it does apply to lots of different things, but you have to remember that the client exists and they don't care about the techniques and all the fancy stuff that you're doing healing wise on them. They just want to feel seen and safe. And if you can make someone feel seen and safe, that healing is going to happen organically. And so, one story I was just telling the other day was that I went to a kinesiologist and kinesiology is all sorts of different. It's a really broad modality of how we practice. But I went to a kinesiologist who did all of this fancy stuff to me as a person on the table. And, they probably felt like they were doing a really good job, right? But I didn't want to go back because I didn't feel like I existed on the table. They weren't connecting to who I was. They were connected to their techniques and everything that they were using and how amazing was all the energy shifts that were happening. But I walked away with so much that I wanted to stay still and I wanted to get clarity on. And there was kind of no empowerment left in that. And so one way to rebook again is probably like, okay, I want you to go home and do this and this, 2 steps. We'll see how that's going. And then when you come back, we'll work on this and this, right? So, or we'll see how that's going and then we'll change that. And so you give them a reason to come back in. They're like, okay, I've got a focus for the next week or 2. I feel heard. I feel like I've got a plan. I feel like I've got something to focus on. And then they come. So that's what you do when you have clients in, but you have to be able to get the clients, right? So how do you get the clients? Have an online booking that's essential. And make sure it's set up properly. Make sure you've got not an appointment every every half an hour available. Most online booking systems will have, you can have like 2 appointments in the morning, 2 appointments in the afternoon, which you can set up available. So it's not so when you go on the online booking, it's not like every 15 minutes you have a free session. So have a look at your booking system, make sure it works, because being a mum myself, all of the ideas come at night. All of the forgot to do that during the day come at night, and so most of and that's where the meltdowns happen and the relationship issues happen and stuff. So it's good to wake up in the morning and see all those online things coming through. So do that. Now the next step, I'm just checking the time. So the next step we have to get really comfortable with is, how do we describe what we do? So how we describe what we do, we can get really technical. We can get really caught up in, again, what our modality is, but that doesn't explain to people what you do. And so that's where we come back to the knowledge that we have and that we're curious about, and then we start talking about that. And that's our way of communicating and connecting with people. So I'll break it down. Most people will ask you what you do because they're just genuinely curious to see whether you've got a connection straight away or not. Like, how do I connect with that person? You can generally find how to connect with someone based off their occupation, right? Because you know instantly what they're interested in a lot of the time. So I'll say something like, I'm a natural therapist, right? And you'll either get the not interested, walk away, which is great because it means that I haven't had to spend time proving myself or anything like that. It's just, oh cool, they're not interested, awesome. Then you've got the people who go, oh, what kind, or what's that, or they'll follow up. And again, it's about connection. So you want to make sure that you start a conversation, not dictate a conversation based off your modality. So if you have something in your head, you're like, kinesiology is a muscle testing tool used for this and this and this, and it's like, they're just going to shut down and zone out, right? But if I'm a natural therapist, oh yeah, tell me more about that. What does it do? And then this one, I'll kind of tend to tailor it to whoever I'm talking to, what I can kind of see in them. So if I'm talking to a man, I'll tend to talk more about anxiety or physical bodies or kids, depending if they're a dad or not. If I'm talking, to a mum, I'll tend to talk more emotionally. Like you can kind of get a general feel of what the person's going to be like and how they're going to respond. So you go with that next, and you say, well, I'm a natural therapist. I work with anxiety. I work with kids with learning difficulties. I work with hormones or health, whatever your knowledge is and whatever your story is, you start entering that. Okay, and then you can see whether you've got engagement or not, and then you go further and say, okay, I'm a natural therapist, I work with anxiety. Oh, how do you do that? I work with the body and the mind. So when anxiety hits your body, it can come from emotional sources, and I work with both. So I relax your body and I do some talk therapy. It's a really good mix. And I haven't said I'm a kinesiologist. We do muscle testing. We go down the path. It's a mix of Chinese medicine, blah 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 blah. They want to know how they can relate to you, how they can talk to you. They want to, people open up these conversations because they want to get to know you, not your modality, what you do, right? So I think, lack of self-confidence can kind of come in there. We kind of up and then we get all tense and feel like we're on show and we have all this stuff to talk about. Or, I'm a naturopath. I work with hormones or sleep or gut health or something like that. Tell them what you work with and tell them who you work with and why. And then open up more questions, more curiosity, and have a conversation with people. I think, these days we've forgotten how to have conversations. So really try and talk about things that will open up with questions, end in questions, or um, end in oh, your sentence in use your inflections to open up more questions. They then you have that opening and connection. They're going to feel genuinely interested in what you're saying, which is really important, right? And that's ultimately what we want. And don't walk away thinking that you're going to get a client, but hopefully what you've done is kind of implanted the seed that somebody local who has anxiety, now your name is connected and your image and that sense of energy that they got from you will be connected for them. Like, oh, I think, I heard this, I felt like that person was good, or something like that. And even when you do your networking groups and things like that, when I did networking, it was, I didn't get a lot of people from the networking group as clients. I think because that energy is that you're in that real professional space. And so to come into that vulnerable space together is a bit like a power shift. But what it did was it enabled me to form friendships with people in an area who I normally wouldn't be friends with. And then when they referred people to me, they genuinely said, oh, you should see my friend Emma. Even though they'd never experienced what I'd done or how I worked or anything like that, they liked who I was. They thought perhaps I was an intelligent person that could help them, or they felt connected with me and safe with me, and so therefore they could trust referring me to somebody else. So that's how it would kind of come about. And as well, when you do networking, it really helps you in your business because all of a sudden you've got this connection with people. You've got brokers and real estate agents and conveyancers and things like that, all people who you wouldn't normally connect with, again, because they're not in your industry or your field. And they're people who you genuinely wouldn't have a lot in common other than you're all in this vulnerable space together each week or month or whatever. And they're business owners as well, so they struggle with the same things you do, and they're just trying to get their name out there as well. So you have that instant connection with them, but they're in an industry which is so different to you. But as you grow, you've kind of got access to friends in the industry that will help you. I have this friend with sign writers and real estate agents and conveyancers. So when I set up my own clinic, it was like I could just all of a sudden go, oh, hey, friends, I need help. And because we were genuinely friends, we helped each other. It was great. And I helped their families and all that kind of stuff. So it was just that really, again, you're setting yourself up in your community as someone to trust. Now, when it comes to social media, I think, I've gone through so many different phases with social media, and it came through while I was already quite established in my business. So I had to get to be comfortable with it. And I really wasn't. But, social media, have it as a side gig, not as your sole source of connection with people. There's so many things out there now saying that, particularly because social media owns your database. So if they choose to shut down your page, then you've got no access to those people anymore. So you really need that sign-up offer on your website or some way of gathering the database within your own MailerLite, MailChimp, or even just on your own spreadsheet, whatever way it is. Make sure that you gather people's contact details, email addresses, because that is going to be the number one way to connect with people. And keep in contact. Because again, social media changes their algorithms all the time. You need that consistent posting to even stay in people's presence. So again, while you're being a practitioner, again, so much of your energy goes out to those one-on-one sessions, that then having to find that creative spark to go out and do marketing, it's kind of exhausting, you know? So if you really connect with social media, then, you know, great, use it, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I use it as a side gig. And it's a way of people getting to know my feel more than really having all of the followers, all of the likes, all of that kind of stuff, and relying on social media for bookings. Because again, you know, social media, particularly with reels, people have this thing with reels where, oh, but 800, 900 people saw my reel, but it's like, how many people, one, are really engaging with that and really watching it? Two, how many of those were actually local? How many of those people are actually in your demographic? How many of those people actually want help with something? And so use it as a gateway rather than the sole source of booking, is what I'm saying. People, again, have to get to know you. So focus more on videos and people seeing your face. Your name, again, your name has to be on there so that they can access you. They remember your name before they remember the business name. And yes, be consistent with it, but share knowledge and share education. You know, that's probably what's most natural from most natural therapists and practitioners, is what we know, information, things like that. If you're a really inspirational person and you love, you know, motivating people, all that kind of stuff, then social media is probably going to feel really natural to you, and you can just repost stuff and share stuff and use it as a way to connect. One thing that I do love is using social media to connect with other business owners and natural therapists in the area. So that's kind of how I'll connect with people. So I have a really good friend who started up here in Foster. She's an acupuncturist, and she found me on social media and said, "Can we have a coffee? I'm new in town. I just want to get to know the other practitioners." I did the same thing. It's perfect. I love that form of connection. And, you know, we've actually become really good friends since. And so, you know, I've had that with a couple of other practitioners as well. And so it becomes a lot easier to refer to each other because you're really getting to know each other. Again, you know, you're always going through the same things, and it's someone, again, when you have connections with other people in the field, then that's going to keep you going. You don't feel so isolated. Being in a little room all day can feel really isolating. So making sure that you go out and you form connections with people who aren't your clients is really, really important for your self-esteem and for your sense of self-worth, and being able to get that rhythm back. Because if you're in that space where you're constantly the therapist and that's your social interaction, that's not healthy. So make sure that you form connections with other practitioners in your area. Even if you don't refer to each other all the time, you know, again, it's just that sense of I have this networking connection around me, which again, that sense of belonging will only make you a strong practitioner and more inspired as well, because they'll say things and you go, oh yeah, that's right, and blah, 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 you're back and forth. And you support each other through those tough bits as well, you know, and through your own life with things. And it's just really lovely. It's something that we don't do a lot of, is just make sure that we make that really in-person connection with people, with new people. I think particularly if we've had a hard time at school, that can hold you back. So making sure that you work through those emotions and blocks as well. I'm just trying to think of what else I really wanted to say. And the last topic I really wanted to talk about was giving yourself permission to be seen. And that's a big emotional block, and it comes back to that fight or flight response, and how you naturally respond when people look at you. So if you close your eyes and you take that deep breath and you imagine people looking at you and expecting something from you, how your nervous system reacts in that moment is really going to dictate how comfortable because that's the key to marketing. That is the purpose of it, is to be seen. So if your nervous system is shutting that down, it's exhausting because you're having to move through that every time that you go to market something, but it also becomes a big energetic block for you as well. So with that, it's really about talking to a therapist or, doing your own process there with releasing the grief and the shame that perhaps has happened in the past, which is related to being seen in the world and feeling exposed in the world. So when you get over that hurdle, then you actually can step into that sense of, I am seen, it's okay. And, take away all the have to be self-confident, have to do this. Put yourself out there as human, like it's, you don't have to be this big, shining star, bright, I am wondrous kind of person. It's like, you know what? Like, we're all a little bit unconfident. We're all a little bit confident, and it's okay. And yeah, like I have these parts about myself, and like you have those parts about yourself, and it's gonna figure itself out. It's all good. We are okay. We're safe. You don't have to have that real deep, I am self-confident, I am self-confident. It's just that sense of, it's okay. It's okay. And people are looking at me and they're expecting something from me, but then, they leave your clinic, or they leave that interaction and they've got 50,000 other things, including themselves, to think about. So really, the only thing that's going to click in their mind is whether you're kind. And that's it. So if you allow yourself to be seen as a kind person, as a genuine person, as an authentic person, then you're going to be okay, right? And so I think that's actually a really nice place to end today's masterclass. But overall, you want to find really proper, deep connections with locals in your area. Set yourself up in a niche which you feel excited to talk about, inspired to talk about, curious, that you've got that natural knowledge because it's something that has piqued you before, and use that as your first niche. Your niche will change over time. Don't worry about it. Everyone goes through a rebrand at around 1 year, 2 years, and then you change everything anyway. If you're struggling to find clients, it means you haven't connected in person enough with people, and you haven't shared your knowledge and your story enough. So get back to that. Don't just try and promote your modality, and get to put your name in people's mouths because they feel good around you. So I hope that helps. And I hope that kind of cuts through a lot of the marketing bullshit that you see out there. Focus on newsletters, focus on in-person connections, focus on building your database. The bigger database that you have, the more connections you have, and keep consistent with that. Really respect that relationship you have. Remember that people have given you their email address because they're interested in you. And then it's your responsibility to keep that relationship going. And so what do you post out in newsletters? If I ever get stuck, I actually just pull an oracle card and talk about that. Talk about kind of like, it'll just spark like a little thought pattern, and I'll just talk about that. But just get out in the world that I'm a safe, kind person who is going to listen to you, and I'm gonna be there for you through your journey, and I have a few ideas. So thank you. If you've got any more questions, let me know. I have the one-on-one mentoring, which is incredible. And that's where we get really down into all of your belief systems, really clear out all this internal shit that gets in your way. And then I've got this beautiful intuitive side, which I'm really lucky to have, which enables me to kind of really see clearly where your business could be going. It's just something that developed, and became organic when I was working in beaches. And of course, I had heaps of small business owners come in and sole traders. And I'd get all these aha moments or instincts or intuition about their businesses, and it would just start rolling. So, um, use me to tap into that source as well. Like if you're really stuck. I've also got the membership. The membership's really cool because I have the masterclasses. I've got extra training in things like trauma and eating disorders and cerebral palsy. There's, so it goes down into like, okay, what do you do? What can you look for when you have these really serious conditions that need to be worked with? So that's the membership. It's also got a lot of mindset stuff there, how-tos, how to set things up like your online presence, and social media, and your sign-up offers and all that kind of stuff. So it's only around $20 a month. So that's really, really awesome. So that's the membership. So that's kind of the practitioner table as a whole. You've got me, and you've got the membership, and of course there's tons of free information as well. But thank you for listening, and I of course will see you again soon, because business is a really emotional journey. It really is, and there's so many ups and downs to it, and I've seen so many people fold their business or not feel confident in their business or feel like it's too hard. And that is the number one reason why I started the practitioner table, was because I was succeeding and I was trying to help these people. And it's just, there's so much internal struggle that goes with building a business, that being a kinesiologist, and that's what I do on a daily basis. I help humans through the difficult moments in their journey. So I want to apply that to business owners and practitioners as well, because I think the more practitioners the world has, the more that are in our community, the better off the world is, right? If everyone can have a space to go to which gives them empowerment in their life, and in their health, I mean, that's so important. So the more of us that can really go through that internal journey and get there and build up a practice, the better the world is. That's my little speech at the end of it. But thank you so much, and I will speak to you guys soon. If you want more information, make sure you're on Instagram. Make sure you sign up to Practitioner Table online. There's the Facebook group as well, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye, guys.